In the warm blue waters of the Pacific Ocean, a young humpback whale named Echo swam alongside her family. The sun shone brightly on the water's surface, creating sparkling ripples that seemed to dance in the light. Echo was a young whale, not yet fully grown, but already strong and full of curiosity. She had heard the stories of the long journey her ancestors had taken, stories of vast oceans, dangerous currents, and the promise of the far north. Today, however, was the start of Echo's own journey. She could feel the vibrations in the water as her family began to move, and she knew it was time. Echo was nervous, but also excited. This was the moment she had been waiting for. The call of the wild had reached her, and now she would follow it. "Are you ready, Echo?" Her mother's deep, comforting voice echoed through the water. Echo nodded, her heart racing. She was ready. With a powerful flick of her tail, Echo followed her mother and the rest of the group. Together, they began their long migration from the warm Pacific waters toward the cold polar seas. The journey would take months, and the young whale knew there would be many challenges along the way. But there was no turning back now. The first day of the journey was calm. Echo swam alongside the other whales, feeling the pull of the current as it gently carried them northward. The water was warm, and the sun streamed through the surface like a blanket of light. Echo felt the rhythm of the ocean in her bones, the gentle rocking of the waves, and the steady beat of her mother's heart beside her. But as the days passed, the currents began to change. The warm waters of the Pacific gradually turned cooler, and the waves grew stronger. Echo could feel the weight of the water pressing against her body, pushing her forward and urging her to swim faster. The current was becoming more difficult to navigate. Her muscles ached, but she pressed on, determined to keep up with the others. Suddenly, the water around her grew darker, and Echo's senses sharpened. She could hear the distant sound of something large moving beneath the surface. Her heart skipped a beat. She recognized the danger. A group of orcas, the wolves of the sea, had appeared. Echo's family quickly began to move in a tighter formation, swimming in unison. The orcas were fast and cunning, but Echo knew that if she stayed close to her mother, she would be safe. "Stay close, Echo," her mother called again, her voice full of calm strength. Echo obeyed, sticking close to her mother's side as they swam with all their might. The orcas circled around them, but they could not get close. The young whale's fear faded as she found strength in the group, understanding that together they could face the dangers of the ocean. The orcas eventually gave up and swam away, leaving Echo and her family to continue their journey. Echo's heart still pounded, but she felt proud. She had faced her first danger of the journey, and she had survived. As the sun began to set, the group slowed down, and Echo swam beside her mother. Her body tired, but her spirit strong. The sky above turned a deep shade of purple, and the stars began to twinkle in the distance. Echo let out a soft, musical call, her voice blending with the sounds of the ocean. It was a sound that had been passed down for generations, a sound that echoed through the waters of the world. "Tomorrow will be another day," her mother said softly. Echo nodded, already drifting into a peaceful sleep. The journey was only beginning, and she knew there would be more challenges ahead. But for now, she was not alone. She had her family, the sea, and the call of the ocean to guide her. And so, under the stars and the soft hum of the ocean, Echo's journey had truly begun. Echo swam deeper into the ocean, the warm waters of the Pacific slowly fading away behind her. Ahead, The water began to cool and the blue grew darker. She felt both excited and curious, for she was entering a new part of the world, a world full of mysteries. With each passing day, she traveled farther from the warm coral reef she knew, and the ocean around her seemed more vast and unknown. The sun shone through the surface in long beams, casting ripples of light across the water. As Echo and her family swam together, they passed through strange and beautiful underwater landscapes. One day, they entered a part of the ocean filled with colorful coral reefs. The reefs stretched like a magical city beneath the water, home to countless tiny fish that darted in and out of the coral. Echo had never seen so many different creatures in one place. There were tiny shrimp that glowed in the dark, fish with rainbow-colored scales, and sea turtles that glided slowly past, their shells smooth and shining. Echo marveled at the beauty of the coral reef. Her mother swam beside her, guiding her through the maze of coral. "This is a place of life," her mother explained. "Many creatures live here, hidden in the crevices and shadows. The ocean is full of surprises if you know where to look." Echo watched in awe as a school of fish surrounded them, creating a shimmering silver cloud in the water. The ocean was alive with movement, and she felt small but connected to everything around her. But soon, the calm waters of the coral reefs gave way to something darker and more mysterious. The whales began to swim into a deep-sea canyon, where the water was so dark it almost seemed like night. Echo felt a strange, nervous feeling deep inside her. The deep ocean was very different from the warm, bright waters she had known. The pressure of the water was heavier here, and the light from above barely reached them. The sounds of the ocean were muffled, like a dream. "Stay close, Echo," her mother said gently, her voice barely more than a whisper in the deep waters. Echo nodded, feeling a shiver of excitement mixed with fear. They swam deeper and deeper, and the water grew colder. Suddenly, something large moved in the shadows. Echo's heart skipped a beat. She could not see clearly, but she sensed that it was something big, maybe bigger than any creature she had ever known. It was the deep ocean, a place of great mystery, where ancient creatures lived and strange phenomena occurred. Her mother gently nudged her forward, reassuring her that they were safe. The creatures of the deep were not their enemies. Still, Echo couldn't help but feel the weight of the unknown pressing against her. Meanwhile, far above the ocean, on a ship in the distance, human scientists were watching Echo's journey. They used special satellites to track the movements of whales like Echo. The scientists had been studying the migration patterns of humpback whales for many years, hoping to understand how these magnificent creatures navigated across the vast oceans. They had discovered that the whales used the stars, the currents, and even the Earth's magnetic field to find their way. They had also learned that the whales' migrations were not just about survival. They were connected to the health of the ocean itself. As Echo swam through the deep-sea canyon, the scientists on the ship noted her position on their maps. They knew that Echo's journey was important. It was not just a matter of life and death for the whale. Her migration was a key to understanding the ocean's health. If the whales were in trouble, it could mean that something was wrong with the ocean. The scientists had been following their progress for months, and Echo's movements were now part of a larger study, helping them learn about the changing conditions of the sea. Below the surface, Echo's journey continued. As the whales passed through the deep ocean, Echo began to notice more strange and wondrous things. One evening, just as the sun set, the water around them sparkled with tiny lights. At first, Echo thought it was the stars shining through the surface of the water. But as she looked closer, she realized that the lights were creatures, small, glowing beings called plankton. They lit up in the dark like tiny stars scattered throughout the ocean. Echo swam through the glowing cloud, feeling as if she was swimming through a sea of stars. The journey through the deep sea was unlike anything Echo had ever experienced. It was a world of quiet mystery where the creatures of the ocean moved in ways she had never seen before. From the glowing plankton to the shadows of giant creatures in the depths, Echo felt both small and powerful in this vast underwater world. As Echo swam on, she realized that her journey was about more than just reaching the polar waters. It was about understanding the ocean itself, a place full of life, mystery, and hidden wonders. Her migration, like that of all the whales before her, was part of a greater cycle, one that was connected to the health of the ocean, the creatures living in it, and even the humans studying it. And so, as the deep ocean surrounded her, Echo swam onward, knowing that each stroke brought her closer to the answers of the ocean's great mysteries and to her own place in the world. The days turned into weeks, and Echo swam farther from the warm waters of the Pacific. The journey had begun to take its toll. The ocean, vast and endless, seemed to stretch on forever. Echo felt the weight of the long migration in her muscles, and her body was growing tired. She could see her family up ahead, but they were moving faster now, driven by the cold waters and the promise of food in the distant polar regions. One day, as the group swam through a thick fog, Echo lost sight of her family. At first, she wasn't worried. She had been swimming with them for so long that she knew they would slow down and wait for her. But as the minutes stretched into hours, the fog refused to lift. Echo felt her heart begin to race. The sounds of her family's calls were no longer clear. The sea seemed strangely silent, and the world around her felt colder and emptier. She called out, but her voice was swallowed by the thick mist. She swam in circles, hoping to find the others, but the fog was like a wall around her. Panic began to rise in her chest. She was alone in the vast, endless ocean. The currents pushed her in different directions, and she felt her strength beginning to fade. Where are they? She thought, her mind racing. Can I really do this alone? The loneliness was overwhelming. For the first time since the journey had begun, Echo wondered if she was strong enough to complete it. She had always relied on her family for support, and now that they were gone, she felt small and insignificant in the face of the vast ocean. Hours passed, and the fog started to thin, but Echo had not found her way back to the group. She felt lost. Just as doubt and fear were about to take over, she heard a soft, calm voice. "Are you lost, little one?" Echo spun around, startled. From the shadows of the mist, an older whale emerged. Her skin was marked with scars, evidence of years spent traveling the oceans. Her eyes were wise and kind, and she carried an air of strength and experience that made Echo feel a sense of calm wash over her. I lost my family," Echo said, her voice trembling. "I don't know if I can continue on my own." The older whale smiled gently, her voice steady and reassuring. "I understand. The ocean is a vast place, and sometimes we feel lost, even when we are surrounded by others. But you are never truly alone in the ocean. You just have to listen." The old whale swam closer to Echo, and the young whale noticed how easily the older whale moved through the water, as if she knew it in a way that Echo could not yet understand. "I am Sage," the whale introduced herself. "I have traveled these waters for many years. I know the ocean, and I know what you are going through." Echo felt a sense of relief. "How do you know what I'm feeling?" she asked, her curiosity growing. Sage chuckled softly. "Because I have felt it too, many times. When I was young, I too became lost and confused. The ocean seemed endless, and I didn't think I could continue. But I learned something important, something that will help you." "What is it?" Echo asked eagerly. Sage swam in a slow, steady circle around Echo, her presence calming the young whale's nervous energy. "The ocean is not a place to conquer alone. It is a place to share with others. In times of danger, in times of loneliness, the strength of the group is what will see you through. The ocean may seem endless, but we are never truly alone when we swim together." Echo thought about Sage's words. She had always relied on her family, but she had never really understood why their connection was so important. Now, as she listened to Sage, she realized that the bond between the whales was more than just a need for company. It was a source of strength. Together, they could face the challenges of the ocean, even when the journey seemed impossible. "You are strong, Echo," Sage continued. "Stronger than you think. Trust in your body, trust in your instincts, and trust in your family. They will always be with you, even when you cannot see them. The ocean has a way of guiding us back to where we belong." Echo felt a deep sense of peace settle within her. The fear and doubt that had been clouding her mind slowly began to fade. She realized that Sage was right. The ocean might be vast, but it was not a lonely place. It was a place of connection, a place where every creature was part of something much larger than itself. "Thank you, Sage," Echo said softly, her voice full of gratitude. "I understand now. I won't give up." Sage smiled, her eyes twinkling with wisdom. "You will be just fine, Echo. The journey is long, but you are never truly alone." With a final nod, Sage turned and swam into the mist, leaving Echo with a sense of calm she had not felt before. Echo closed her eyes and listened to the sounds of the ocean, the soft hum of the currents, the distant calls of her family, the rhythm of the world around her. She wasn't alone. She never had been. Echo took a deep breath and began to swim forward once more. Her body still felt tired, and the ocean still seemed endless. But now she knew that as long as she had the strength to keep moving, she would find her way back to her family. She would not give up. The journey was long, but she was not alone. And so, with renewed determination, Echo swam through the vast ocean, ready to face whatever came next, knowing that the power of unity and the wisdom of those who had come before her would guide her along the way. The ocean, which had been so calm and beautiful for much of Echo's journey, suddenly began to change. The water grew dark, and the air felt thick with tension. Echo could sense that something was wrong. Her body instinctively slowed, and she glanced nervously at the sky, where thick clouds were gathering, blocking out the sun. The whales in her group began to swim more urgently. Echo's mother, who had always been a strong presence beside her, now seemed tense. "Stay close, Echo," she said, her voice sharp with concern. "Something's coming." Echo felt the hairs on her back prickle with unease. The ocean had been her home for so long, but now it felt like an entirely different place. Hostile, unpredictable, and dangerous. The first crack of thunder echoed across the water, and the wind picked up, howling through the sea. The ocean, which had once been calm, now seemed to be shaking with power, as if nature itself was angry. The whales swam faster, trying to reach a safer area, but the storm came upon them quickly. The wind whipped through the water, creating waves that towered above them. Echo felt her body thrown from side to side as the waves grew higher, crashing around her. The water churned violently, making it difficult to see anything through the thick spray. A powerful gust of wind pushed Echo off course, and before she knew it, she was separated from the group. Her heart pounded in her chest as she tried to find her family through the storm. The thunder boomed above, and the waves grew stronger, crashing down like mountains of water. Echo struggled against the current, but the ocean felt endless. No matter which way she swam, the waves seemed to push her back. Echo called out, her voice lost in the chaos. "Mom, where are you?" But there was no answer, just the howling wind and the roar of the waves. Echo's body was growing exhausted, and fear started to take root in her heart. The storm was so fierce. Could she survive this? Suddenly, another huge wave crashed over her, sending her tumbling into the depths. For a moment, Echo was trapped in the water, unable to tell up from down. She kicked and flailed, trying to push herself back to the surface, but the water kept pulling her deeper. She was small, helpless, lost in the mighty ocean. Just as her lungs began to burn with the need for air, Echo felt something strong and steady lift her. A familiar voice echoed through the water, calm and unwavering. "Echo, keep swimming. Follow my voice." It was her mother's voice. Echo struggled to find her bearings, but with every ounce of strength, she followed the sound of her mother's call. Slowly, she kicked her powerful tail and began to swim upwards toward the voice. The water around her was still wild, but she pushed through, determined to reach her family. After what felt like an eternity, Echo broke through the surface of the water and gasped for air. The storm still raged above her, but she could hear the calls of the other whales nearby. Her mother appeared beside her, swimming gracefully through the waves despite the storm's fury. Echo's heart surged with relief. "Stay with me, Echo," her mother urged, her body close, guiding her through the storm. "We have to stay together. Keep swimming. We'll make it through." Echo nodded, her fear melting into determination. She was no longer alone. Her family was with her, and together they would face whatever the ocean threw at them. The storm raged for hours, the wind howling like a pack of wolves, and the waves crashing mercilessly against their bodies. The whales swam in unison, using their instincts to stay together, to protect each other. The young whales, including Echo, stayed close to the older members of the group, who knew how to navigate through the rough waters. At times, the waves seemed to rise higher than the sky, and the ocean threatened to swallow them whole. But through it all, Echo held on to the lesson she had learned from Sage. The group was strong. Together, they could survive. By the time the storm finally began to subside, Echo was exhausted. The ocean, once so beautiful and calm, now seemed vast and dangerous. But as the wind died down and the waves settled into gentle swells, Echo felt a sense of awe. They had survived. They had made it through the storm together. The whales slowly came to a stop, their bodies tired but strong. The dark clouds above began to break apart, and the first light of dawn peeked through the cracks in the sky. The ocean, though still rough, seemed less threatening now, as if it had calmed in the wake of its own fury. Echo swam alongside her mother, her body still trembling from the storm, but her heart full of gratitude. She had learned something vital during the storm. She had learned that, in the face of the most powerful forces of nature, there was no power stronger than the bond of family. The storm had tested them, but it had also brought them closer together. "Thank you, Mom," Echo said softly, her voice filled with emotion. "I couldn't have made it without you." Her mother nudged her gently with her nose, a silent promise that they would always be there for each other. You are strong, Echo. We all are. The storm may have tried to break us, but together we are unbreakable. And as the storm passed, and the ocean returned to its quiet rhythm, Echo swam with a newfound sense of purpose. The journey was far from over, but she now knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, the strength of the group and the love that bound them together would always guide them through the darkest storms. After weeks of swimming through the vast and sometimes perilous ocean, Echo and her family finally reached their destination. The cold waters of the polar seas greeted them with a refreshing chill, and for the first time in a long while, Echo felt a sense of calm. The relentless warmth of the Pacific was now far behind, and the icy waters of the poles held a quiet promise. This was the place they had been journeying to, a place where life would begin again. The ocean here was different. The waters were rich with food, swirling with schools of fish and krill, and the sun shone only dimly, casting a pale glow over the ice floes. Echo had heard stories of the cold polar seas, where whales like her could feast and grow strong before the next migration began. But she had never imagined how powerful it would feel to finally arrive. The group began to spread out, searching for food. Echo felt the hunger in her belly, and she joined her family as they dove deep into the water to feed. The cold water seemed to invigorate her, and as she swam with ease, she could feel the strength returning to her muscles worn thin from the long journey. She learned to dive deeper and longer, following her mother's movements and listening to her guidance as they hunted together. At first, the waters were full of uncertainty. The prey here was different, smaller fish, and vast clouds of krill swirling in the deep. Echo's early attempts were clumsy, but with each dive, she grew more confident. Her body became stronger, more skilled, and as she swam through the rich, icy waters, she could feel herself becoming a part of this world, a world that had once seemed so far away. But the migration had not been just about survival. As Echo dove and swam, she found herself thinking about the journey she had completed, the great storm, the loneliness, the lessons learned from Sage and her family. And now, here in the polar waters, she realized that the migration had not only changed her physically, but emotionally too. She was no longer just the young whale who had set out from the warm Pacific waters. She had become a part of something much greater than herself. Echo's bond with her family grew deeper during this time. The challenges they had faced together in the storm had made them stronger as a group. Now they swam side by side, more united than ever. She noticed how her older relatives swam with grace, knowing the waters and the rhythms of the sea like old friends. Echo had learned so much from them, but she also knew that she was no longer just following. She was now an active part of the group, with a role to play in the great cycle of migration, feeding, and survival. One day, as Echo surfaced for air, her mother swam up beside her. The water around them was clear, and the icebergs in the distance gleamed like frozen mountains. Echo felt a wave of happiness and peace wash over her. The cold water was harsh, but it was also beautiful. The polar seas, she realized, were where life would renew itself, where new generations of whales would be born, where the endless cycle of the ocean would continue. "You have grown strong, Echo," her mother said with pride, her deep voice steady in the cold waters. "I have watched you become part of the ocean in a way I never imagined. You are no longer the young whale who followed me. You are one of us now." Echo felt a deep sense of belonging. She had arrived at the place of rebirth, not just for the ocean, but for herself. She was no longer the frightened, uncertain whale who had first set out from the warm Pacific. She was stronger, wiser, and ready to face whatever challenges the ocean had yet to offer. Then, as if to celebrate her growth, Echo did something she had never done before. With a sudden burst of energy, she pushed her massive body toward the surface of the water and leaped high into the air, her tail flicking behind her as she soared above the waves. For a moment, she hung in the air, a perfect silhouette against the pale sky, before splashing back into the sea with a joyful splash. The cold water sprayed around her, and Echo felt the freedom of the open ocean. The moment felt like a symbol of everything she had learned. She had crossed the vast ocean, survived the storm, and learned the strength of family and unity. She had grown from a young whale into a powerful member of the group. She was no longer alone. She was part of the great ocean, part of its rhythm, its power, and its mysteries. As she swam back down to join her family, Echo felt a deep sense of peace. She had found her place in the world. The ocean had welcomed her, and she had found harmony with the sea. The long migration had tested her, but it had also shaped her. She was no longer just a small, uncertain whale. She was a force of nature, one with the ocean itself. And as the group swam together, deeper into the cold waters, Echo felt the thrill of life coursing through her. She had completed the journey, not just physically, but spiritually. She had found belonging, found strength, and found herself. With a final joyful leap, Echo broke through the surface of the water once more, her body arching high into the air. She was free, she was strong, and she was home.